Welcome to the Atharva Forum. We have with us internationally acclaimed chemist and scientist, Professor Gautam Desiraju, to discuss India in the geopolitics of critical minerals. Critical minerals have highly complex global supply chains, and the power that nations wield are due to the high degree of monopoly. For example, China produces 63% of the world's output of rare earth elements. It controls 95% of rare earth manufacturing and 85% of the oxides. And China has developed this security over decades to safeguard itself from global free market challenges. India is, from being an exporter of copper, is now a net importer of copper. The Sterlite factory shut down, and its impact has been discussed by you in detail in your previous Atharva conversations. So, Professor Desiraju, my first question to you is, have any steps been taken to restore our status in the future, in the near future? And where else are there copper reserves in India besides Tuticorin?
Professor Operajita, it is great pleasure to talk with you through the auspices of Atharva Forum. And this is a topic, yes, indeed, the whole matter of critical minerals and metals that now acutely affects geostrategy and geopolitical considerations between nations. And China has understood these matters extremely well and extremely precisely over the last 30 years. And in your introductory comments, you've talked about both rare earths and copper. They are actually related in a sense. It almost seems that China was doing a dry run with us with regards to copper and as regards the smelter in Thoothukudi. Rare earths is a far more dangerous and strategic situation for us, but your question pertained to copper. And copper is not a particularly abundant metal, and it's not particularly uncommon either. India does have ore deposits, but it's important to know that the smelter in Thoothukudi relied on imported ore. And this is true for most of the mining and metallurgical activities in the world. Countries import the ore, raw ore, from places where it is obtained abundantly. For reasons that are not very clear to even to geologists, the supply of copper ore is only located, good copper ore is located only in a few countries. Chile, Peru, Democratic Republic of Congo, Zambia, Philippines of all places, would you believe? And a little bit, tiny bit in Australia. We have ores in India, roughly in a belt that say begins somewhere near eastern Rajasthan and goes up to Jharkhand. But the ore is of low grade. And the stuff that we were getting in Thoothukudi, I think mostly it was from Chile and Peru. That was a much higher quality ore. And so we were processing it there. And believe me, before the plant closed down, the Thoothukudi plant accounted for 40% of our finished copper output, and we were an exporter, yes, indeed.
The US or the world's ability to maintain any militarily competitive edge depends on the same vulnerable change. We know how China flexed muscle with Japan, and how it flexed muscle with the United States over Taiwan. While India battles, copper supply with emerging technologies and dependency on the same, many critical and rare earths for which India's has demands will be gargantuan. huge in the future. Could you elaborate then on the supply constraints? And is there enough research in India on ensuring material resource security for the manufacturing sector? And before that, would you care to enlighten us on what rare earth minerals are and how critical they are in the geopolitics of the planet?
Thank you, Professor Operajita. There are many questions you have uh, asked, and I'm not sure that I now remember all of them, but here we go. I mean, rare earths are rare in the sense that they don't occur in any one place in quantities that are sufficient to extract them cleanly and economically. They are not rare in the sense of uncommon, because some of the rare earths, for example, cerium, uh, which is a common one, is more plentiful in the earth's crust than copper. And all the 17 rare earths, for example, are more commonly found in the earth's crust than, say, silver. So it's not that they don't occur, but they occur in very small quantities. They also occur together. Chemically speaking, the 17 metals are very, very similar. And so they occur together, and separating them is a huge problem. Now, what makes the problem scientifically more tricky is that the properties of these 17 rare earths are all quite distinct. And I don't want to get too much into the scientific aspect, but the way in which the atomic structure of these rare earths is constituted, the differences in the properties usually come in optical properties and magnetic properties. And this is what makes them extremely strategic. Today, you can't, without rare earths, common life as we know it today uh, won't be possible. For example, I wouldn't be able to talk to you on this computer with these earphones, or use this cell phone, or have a digital watch, or drive a car. The Air Force wouldn't be able to have fighter planes. You wouldn't have nuclear submarines. You wouldn't be able to have any kind of fluorescent lighting. In other words, uh, life as we know it would not be possible without these rare earths. Now, for instance, typical, if you take any average car, there's something like 15 kilos of rare earths in a typical car. In an average nuclear submarine, there is something like 2,000 kilos of rare earths
Wow.
in something like that. And the uses are highly uh, strategic. I mean, it's not just critical. Critical simply means anything that is useful. Strategic means something that one needs in times of trouble and that somebody else can deprive you of. As you
Yes.
correctly pointed out, the Senkaku Island dispute between China and Japan. For something relatively small, the
Yes.
Chinese were able to take a punitive action against Japan. And the price of neodymium in this case, I think, went up a factor of 10 times or something in 1 year. Now, neodymium is particularly important because it is a constituent of the most powerful permanent magnets that have been made. And to understand the significance of this, one must think a little bit about the way in which the world is going towards energy in general, and the question of renewable energies. Now, for electricity to be generated, you require motors, you require turbines, to wind turbines especially, uh, to move. And for any moving thing, you need magnetic fields, which can be created by electrical fields, which are created by batteries. And so you see the importance of things like lithium, cobalt, and all that are used in these batteries. Now, neodymium gives you an alternative scenario because when you mix it with boron and a large amount of iron, you get extremely powerful permanent magnets. These are magnets that have the magnetic field without passing electricity and so on through them. So you can see immediately, economics wise, the need for neodymium goes up if the price of cobalt goes up. Cobalt is also because that is used in the conventional lithium ion battery. Now, cobalt is largely found only in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it's a
Wow.
highly polluting technology. It is rather expensive and not so common as neodymium. Neodymium, therefore, has this huge advantage in permanent magnets. And in fact, if I was asked to pick one of the 17 rare earths, I would say neodymium is probably the most important one because it is really required badly to make these permanent magnets. Now,
What about
talk-
Praseodymium?
excuse me, praseodymium.
Yes.
Interesting. See, praseodymium and neodymium are actually called twins. And for a long time, people thought they were the same element. And in fact, even today, they are sold in a form called didymium. And they are so very close, and yet, from this magnetic point of view, they are quite different. Well, not quite different, but different enough that makes part of the reason the price of neodymium is so high is because it is very difficult to separate it from praseodymium. Imagine some Siamese twins or something like that. And so this is really, really tricky. I mean, these two particular elements, and we have no other example in the periodic table where a set of two elements is also given another name, which is called actually, as I said, didymium. But coming back to this business of China, this is a very long and deeply thought out strategy. I mean, Deng Xiaoping said in 1992, the West Asia has oil, China has rare earths. Now, it's not true that, yes, China has rare earths, but then so does Brazil, so does USA, and so does India. India has a lot of rare earths. In fact, India has more rare earths probably than the USA and Australia put together. China
Wow.
has only 36% of the ores in its own territory. But as it controls, as you said, 90% of the manufacture, and today I think it's come down slightly. Uh, so, how did the Chinese do it? The Chinese did it because they understood this problem right in the beginning. 30 years they have been at it. Secondly, as I pointed out, the chemistry is very tricky. Separating these rare earths is difficult, but for the properties, you need them separated. You don't want them together. Next, the thing is extremely dirty. All metallurgy is dirty, copper metallurgy included. Even in Thoothukudi, there's no place anywhere in the world where you can extract a metal from the ore without causing pollution. So you must have a scope of how to control this pollution and how to do it within the norms and so on. For
Okay.
many
So
years, China did not bother. It did not bother about this pollution thing. And don't
okay,
forget, China has got large amount of uninhabited areas. And
that's right.
what it does is in places like Inner Mongolia and Sichuan, where hardly anybody lives,
Yeah.
that's where it does all this dirty chemistry. They pollute the air, they pollute the water, they pollute everything in trying to
Yes.
extract these rare earths. And so the first step is they know where the ore is, we don't know. Second, they are willing to do that dirty chemistry. USA was actually manufacturing, and then it started, sending all this dirty stuff to be done in China. So that's the second. The third is that then they start making the finished products from the pure metal, and they
Mm-hmm.
force other countries to send their manufacturing plants for the finished products to China. Otherwise, they say they won't supply them. So you see, companies from other countries have to willy-nilly put their manufacturing in China,
That's
and
right.
once they get enough knowledge in that manufacturing, then they kick out the foreign company and then start doing it themselves. So
They
you
are
see, they
entirely
control.
law to themselves. They're unaccountable, and nobody can take them on. So
That's
let
all. Right from the beginning to the end, they control the entire situation. Recently, after Senkaku, Japan has gone to Australia. And then Australia, of course, they set up a company which is called a Linam Corporation in Australia, which is the most famous one.
yeah,
The other day, something in Western Australia also has been started.
that's
Uh,
right. So let
Yang
me
Bang or some company. It has
call
now started Australia, but Australia doesn't have as much as we do. We have much
much more.
more of ore, and we're not doing. See, I'll give you a simple example. China has only 6 times the amount of ore that we have, and yet they manufacture 40 times the amount.
That's right. Well, you've already been dealing with what I wanted to ask you about, but let's focus on that. How is India dealing specifically, both from a scientific point of view and from the strategic point of view, with with Chinese monopoly? I mean, are we dealing with it at all? Has this sort of sunk in? China filed 80% of the new international patents related to rare earth technology. Where is India in all this, and how is it handling this?
Well, I'll give you a small example. Yesterday we had a situation where, Hyundai Pakistan produced a kind of a tweet about Kashmir,
Yes,
and lots of people started howling on Twitter, and the official line, government line, seems to be nothing. And I think a few months ago, Marriott Company mentioned Taiwan and Tibet as separate countries in one of their brochures or something. China shut down their websites of those companies immediately.
wow,
So a lot of our stuff is all this, talk about Atmanirbhar and so on. This is good for political rallies, but on the ground, it doesn't add up. You see, there is a thing called Indian Rare Earths Limited, which was set up in 1950,
hmm,
and which then became Indian Rare Earths Corporation, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Department of Atomic Energy. Now, fortunately or unfortunately, mostly unfortunately, these rare earths occur in what are called uh, beach sands or monazite sands, or sands which are found in the sandy beaches in tropical regions of the world. Kerala has a lot of them. Now, these sands contain a radioactive element called thorium, which is
yes,
essential for our atomic energy program. Now, very unfortunately for rare earth research, the major constituent of those beach sands are cerium and lanthanum and the other rare earths. So, because of this connection with thorium, right from the beginning, this rare earth business became associated, in fact, linked exclusively with the Department of Atomic Energy. So today, if you find rare earths in other parts of India, and there is plenty. There's in the stuff in the beaches of Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Orissa, Jharkhand. There's even bits in parts of West Bengal and the Northeast. So all these matters simply get referred to this Department of Atomic Energy, which then does nothing. Now, second, even if we went through the bureaucracy of DAE, which is terrible because the rare earths, neodymium, wind turbines, energy, they have nothing to do with DAE or radioactivity or atom bombs. They have nothing to do with that, and yet everything goes through that today. Second, between the IAS and the Supreme Court, I don't think anything is possible in this country. It takes is a simple PIL and go to the Supreme Court, and then just like what happened in Thoothukudi. I mean, copper is nothing. Copper is something which humankind has known for 4,000 years. It's the first metal that was known to man in a pure condition. They were able to block us with copper. But today, I tell you that apart from Supreme Court and IAS, which are in themselves insurmountable obstacles, insurmountable. All you need is a small group of disgruntled politicians here and there, like what happened in Thoothukudi, and it will stop. More than that, If you feel that China is not preventing us from doing research in rare earths, then you are really living in La La Land. It is
Yes.
entirely possible that China has subverted anything to do with research, with rare earths, anything in this country. Because for a country that has so much of this stuff, not to have done anything, we don't even know where the rare earths exist. Forget about doing research, forget about knowledge and know-how. They've started something, called Kabil, Khanij Bidesh India Limited. Now, you see, this is a conglomeration of companies like Nalco, which does things with aluminium, HCL, which does things about copper, and then cobalt, titanium. They're all the elements in the periodic table. So, along with that, rare earths. But rare earths is highly
It's
specific. I'm
a
talking
mix.
only neodymium, I'm talking europium. And so then they've got some overall thing. Some babus will sit, there'll be a meeting, nothing will happen. And nothing has happened, Professor Operajita. Nothing has happened. Nothing will happen in this dispensation unless they have a special cell which, let us say, simply has to do with just neodymium. Say that it is beyond the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court. It has to be. It has to be. The moment it goes there, if it goes to the lawyers and the bureaucrats, then it will get into secular groups and all. They'll say that this is against Article 25, it is against my right to follow my religion. Some connection will be brought. China is very good at doing all this. They did it in Tuticorin. Why will they not do it now on a
That's
matter that is so much more vital? And in fact, this latest attempt, this Quad, if you ask me behind the scenes, I think it is our government's desperate attempt to try to export some ores to America and Australia to process them there. We don't have the confidence to process and do this dirty chemistry in India. Because A, we don't have so many regions which are unpopulated. Australia does, China does, America does. Japan was able to come out of China's grip partially by sent through this Linam and all these things. So this is, I think, the only thing that India can do right now, because otherwise it looks very pathetic. I mean, it's
and also,
pathetic because I mean, we can't do something with copper, and then you're asking me to do something with promethium and europium. I think this is, it defies description, defies imagination, and I don't. I'm sorry to be so pessimistic, but I don't think we even understand that we have a problem.
well, that's the crux of the matter. And there are certain things, I mean, certain areas which have to be freed from the bureaucratic stranglehold. It's that simple as that. There are
Yes.
some things that bureaucrats don't understand.
No.
And this very sophisticated level of science, I think, is not something that they've paid attention to. And even if they did pay attention to that, how far they could comprehend it is, it's it's something that we have to question. So I want to ask you, my next, a major EV battery bet for India is on aluminum over lithium, which is neither rare nor common, but the sudden status of powering the global revolution makes it strategic. So my question is aluminum a feasible alternative to counter the over dependency on lithium?
There are many technical problems associated with aluminium. And people have mentioned aluminium, they've even mentioned iron and things like that. Lithium still has a considerable edge over the other metals for conventional battery technology. I think the question is more the lithium cobalt duet with the electrical magnets as with the through the batteries compared to the neodymium dysprosium permanent magnets. So I think aluminium is still, yes, it's very common, but the expense that would be still involved in terms of R&D to get it at a competitive level
Mhm.
for solar energy and for non-conventional energy. This is the link between copper and the rare earths, because wherever you want to transmit energy From one place to the other, you need copper. And so this link between these two critical elements, neodymium and copper, comes through this. And coming back to your earlier point, we have a challenge that we don't even know in which department of government to place this matter in. Does it go to atomic energy? No. Does it go to mines and minerals? Yes and no. Does it go to science and technology? Maybe. Does it go to oil and natural gas? Probably, because as we go away from oil and natural gas, we will have to worry more about other forms of energy, which is why again the rare earths come in. And in a country and in a world which is going to depend less on oil, then you see once again an element like cerium may not become so important, because you will not have catalytic converters in cars, because cars will not run on petrol. And so these elements and so on, they're all sort of mixed up with each other. But coming back to the main drift of what I was saying, uh, we don't know, there must be an apex organization, and so maybe there should be a ministry of rare earths, or maybe our ministries themselves should be reconstituted. Finally, there is the overall devil of the finance ministry, and more than that, the department of expenditure. Because, yeah, finished. I mean, department of expenditure, the IAS bureaucrats, and the judges of the Supreme Court, who are always trying to bring in Article 25 and all minority religions into all these scientific matters. So you see there, so you've got a whole leftist sort of a group, which is also maybe funded by China, maybe funded by the US. Maybe the US wants us to be more dependent on them and send them the ores at cheaper and cheaper prices, which they may send the ore to Australia or some other place. So we don't know. We don't know. I mean, finally, let's not forget, Professor Operajita, that at the time of the Beijing Olympics, the whole scandal with those Bellary mines, there's a whole mountain of iron oxide in Bellary. And literally, they scooped up half the mountain and exported it to China for it to build steel, to build the stadiums for the Beijing Olympics.
Oh my
So
God.
whole ministries have fallen in Karnataka and so on because of that particular scandal. So we are able to play this kind of gundagiri for a metal like iron. So you can imagine, I mean, rare earths is like, some meal in Taj Mahal hotel. They will enjoy themselves. The politicians will really enjoy themselves, in the kinds and ways in which they can make money off something like this. If they can do it with hematite and iron oxide, then I
Right.
think our imaginative genius of our people is very well preserved in this land. Maybe not in research of praseodymium and neodymium, but different ways of making money. No, we are tops there. I'm sorry to
Professor.
speak like this, but I
No,
think
no,
the
no.
time has come in our country where we have to speak like this,
No,
trying
I
to be
think
polite and saying we need to have a nuanced response to China about this and that because it will do something in Doklam. Arey, they'll come and, with a knife to your throat. What did
China,
they do with Japan and Senkaku? They don't care. I mean, the first thing that China has done is that it says civil and military needs go together.
exactly.
They don't see any difference between civil and thing. And neodymium, which is used for these permanent magnets, which is used for a guided missile system, Europium. It is also used for a GPS for a humble car which takes you and me from place to place. So you see, the same application is used in a civil and a military need. So the research of all these things is done together. Whereas here we have a civilian research organization called CSIR, then we've got a military one called DRDO and Midhani, and they don't talk to each other. Nobody even knows what's happening. Sometimes I want to know, do they even know the names of the rare earths elements? I, so I have my doubt when I talk to them sometimes. They would make any element they'll call critical, uncommon, strategic, imprecise knowledge of scientific terms, technological terms. I think it is all pervasive, and it is not beyond China to pay people in India not to do research on certain topics. It's not beyond them.
No, you're absolutely right. But the point about a ministry for rare earth sciences is a ministry for rare earths is very well taken. I think you ought to make that suggestion because I don't think and there is a cognizance of the seriousness of this matter. So let me come to my next question. Why are different partners needed in the critical material value chain? And how is critical mineral security an important issue? You've been dealing with this, but I want you to deal with it in a little more detail with strategic as well as economic significance.
Because the chemistry of each of these metals is so different. The first question, why do we sometimes need different partners? So the exact composition of the ores may be different in different places, slightly different. I mentioned this thing, dysprosium. Dysprosium right now is an essential constituent of the neodymium boron iron magnet. And a big challenge in the research area is how to reduce the proportion of dysprosium. I think right now it's about 0.5%. It has to be made 0.1% or something. Till that point of time, the country that has dysprosium ores will be in a strategic advantage. Today, only two countries have that, that is China and Australia. So, to some extent, therefore, we need Australia. I think the Quad grouping is a lucky group that seems to have, we are lucky enough to get into this group. Let me put it like that. And I think we were included in this Quad group for rare earths simply because we have so much of it. Maybe our government has been told that you have these rare earths, please go and find them. And maybe this is the first time they realize that they had them also. Maybe. Maybe because if you ask them, they will only say DAE, monazite, thorium, DAE. It will only go back to that. You see, states like Orissa, Jharkhand, and so on, major mineral wealth. And
Yes.
even trying to find out where the rare earths are, that itself is going to become a major and interesting challenge. I mean, people forget that suppose you put our minds to it, it's a very interesting research topic. This is not dull chemistry. And we have no lack of brains in this country for people to go and find out all these things and get scientific answers. It's not that, we are exactly. The problem comes at the next step, the management and how this whole thing is organized and done. There we fail and we fail miserably. A common complaint that science bureaucrats tell me is that when they go around in Delhi with these various ministries, they find that the senior bureaucrats get transferred very often. And they say nobody sits in the same chair for more than, say, a year or two. And so by the time you go and convince them and try to get certain things going and so on, then the next time you go, suddenly that person or that lady, she has left the desk and then there is somebody else. So you have to start the process all over again. And there has to be again some systemic way for overcoming this. It should be person neutral. It should not depend on who is sitting in the desk. And I think we have a great deal of all these lacunae. And firstly, the urgency of the problem hasn't come to us as yet. I think we are not, it's, in the end, it's not the scientist's job. So much has been said and done about rare earths, even in India, even in the social media, even in talks, blogs, television programs. By now, the government should have known that there is something called rare earths, which is different from Indian Rare Earths Corporation. Because the moment you say rare earths, they'll say, तो इंडियन रेयर अर्थ कॉर्पोरेशन है ना मुंबई में, और वो लोग देखेंगे. Indian Rare Earths Corporation has nothing to do with the 17 rare earths. Let me say it loud and clear. Nothing.
So what is if I ask you for strategic suggestions you have to make to government right now to ramp this up, to make people aware, the bureaucracy aware, the political leadership aware about how this might put us on the back foot forever.
Okay. Three. I can tell you three easy ones, not difficult things. Okay. First, get Department of Atomic Energy completely out of this rubbish.
All right.
completely and surgically. They can do whatever they like with thorium, and they can have a monopoly on that Kovalam beach. Give them that Kovalam beach and let them do whatever they want. But anything outside that beach, the DAE should come out of it completely. First. Second, there are too many rare earths and too many important critical needs. 6 months, you get a committee of top people in this subject and ask them to identify just two out of these 17, looking at geological, strategic, cost-wise, our relationships with other countries. It has to be a group of people across a wide variety of disciplines, but all top in that area. Say a group of about half a dozen people. One diplomatic kind of person, one scientific person, one economist, things like that. Just give me, identify 2 out of the 17 that are important. Third, declare these 2 metals as metals of strategic importance that come beyond the bureaucracy, the Supreme Court, and Articles 25 to 30. Declare it as off bounds, make it secret like the Manhattan Project. Put some barbed wire, put some fencing, put it somewhere in the most uninhabited part of India. And put those gangs there and tell them in 2 years, you better come up with something that will give me so much of XX metal and thing. So basically 3. Kick the Department of Atomic Energy out, identify 2 metals, and third, remove Babudam, Articles 25 to 30 and Supreme Court out of this picture. Make it top secret. Otherwise, you can't do it. You can't do this with this Westminster model and Samajwadi Party and Bahujans and Parliament and shouting and, Chennai and Punjab. You can't do it in this setup. Impossible.
Well, very well made and
harsh words, but because people, you see, problem, Professor Operajita, in our country, we are kind when we should be unkind, and we are unkind when we should be kind.
Well said. Well said. We're also perennially digressing. I contrast this to the United States. Its investment in R&D, for example. Do you want to tell us a little bit about India and what we could do in the R&D sector and how that
I know, and I normally wouldn't say this, but for rare earths, I will say that research in rare earths R&D should be primarily a government concern. But the private sector can be subcontracted to do various auxiliary jobs. But the overall planning, because private sector cannot cope with geopolitical warfare from China.
That's right.
Only a government can cope with it. So you need an agency or a group that is powerful enough to handle China. So I speak a lot about pharmaceuticals and so on, where I'm a strong advocate of the private sector coming in. Here, this is an area which is really, really strategic. It's really important. They're calling it the oil of the future. They are calling it the energy of the future. These 17 metals are going to be more important than oil in 10 years. And this is something that you don't just, no private sector company in India, not even the biggest, would be able to handle the ramifications of a problem like rare earths in its entirety. And there have to be some people who are, let us say, are permanent. By permanent, I mean 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. There have to be some rare earth czar or something like that. Simply something vague, that scientific advisor to the government of India, that's not enough. That's too general. Scientific advisor to the government of India means he has to look everything from astronomy to zoology, which means nothing. He does nothing afterwards. And he's just running behind the ministers and wondering about whether the minister is in a good mood. So there has to be somebody who is overall boss or dictator of rare earths for the whole country for 5 years, 7 years, something like that. And because the matter is like that. How did I come back to the Manhattan Project again and again? How were they able to build that bomb so quickly? They had the science. Even in this particular thing, I'd like to mention the name of this scientist, Masato Sagawa, who discovered one of the two discoverers of the boron neodymium iron magnet, who got the most recent Queen Elizabeth Engineering Prize, which is called the Nobel Prize for Engineering equivalent. And Sagawa got the prize as against another top researcher from America who discovered the same magnetic material at around the same time. Uh, Even though Sagawa's process was more costly, he got the prize because the material he was able to make was stronger and tougher. So you can see that even at the highest research levels and so on, a high degree of technical perfection and precision is called for. It was not enough to discover this stuff. You had to make it also strong. It's an engineering problem, apart
That's
from a
right.
scientific problem. Do we
Yes.
have this kind of fellows who can sit and, it could be done. I guess we did something like the space mission and so on with this kind of a mission mode. Yes, the word I'm looking for is mission mode. I think rare earths, especially if you were to ask me, I will say one for the expensive side and one for the cheap side. Cerium and neodymium. If you take just these two,
Mhm.
make it like a mission mode. Mission mode India neodymium.
Yes.
It has to be that. And if this wretched constitution has to be changed, then change it. Say anything to do with neodymium, the courts can't come in. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. Put a
Um,
mention of it. Just pass it there. Neodymium
that's
means
right. That's
Supreme
right.
Court nahi aa sakta. It cannot come. It's beyond the law. Yes, something has to be beyond the law because your whole country, your existence will depend on a lack of this metal tomorrow.
Wait, but you must be aware of two American senators recently. They've passed this bipartisan bill where they're talking about securing their rare earth capabilities. It's just
Yes, I
very
know.
recent. You read
I
about
know. I
that.
know. I know. I know.
So where are we in comparison?
I think everything I've said so far should give you the answer to that question.
I know that. That was a rhetorical question. So let me, I mean, we wrap up in a little bit, but I wanted you to dwell a little bit because, for better or for worse, the United States has always been, a world leader in technology and innovation, and they've woken up to this fact. So the future of U.S. security is tied directly to rare earth resource security.
Correct. Correct.
And failing to secure resources needed to keep pace with technological innovation means an inability to remain globally competitive.
Yeah.
Now, so China has developed this security over decades. I mean, hats off to their prescience. They're thinking 40 years ahead. And and fluctuations in the global market challenges are not going to make any difference to them.
No.
Now, the US is, there could be a global crisis if China decides to flex muscle. I mean, it could
Sure.
happen overnight. So the
Sure.
US's ability to maintain any militarily competitive edge depends on the same vulnerable chain. They're very vulnerable at the moment. So, precision guided weapons, stealth technology, drones, satellites, key strategic defense elements that rely on rare earths. Each F 35 aircraft, shared by 14 allied nations and considered instrumental for warfare, contains 920 pounds of rare earth metals.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, America's woken up, albeit late.
Yeah.
It's woken up now.
Well, let's not forget, Professor Aprajita, that why did Japan get into World War II? It is because of the punitive oil sanctions that were placed on that country by America. So when you deprive a country of a raw material that is vital, it can do all sorts of desperate things.
That's right.
And today the US is being deprived of this thing. It's not that the US, sadly had the lead in this area. They simply felt the chemist, and they have some sources of rare earths they have or they can buy.
In
But they
California,
felt
it's
it's too. They felt the chemistry is too dirty, and that's why they sent it to China. I'm sure now they regret it.
I'm sure they do. And China has a reputation for tight-fisted control of the market, and it uses its dominance as an unprincipled economic lever. Uh, what do you forecast here now in the near future?
Unprincipled. That is the word. The final insult for us is that you may be interested to know that Baluchistan has got quite a lot of these rare earths located there.
Well, that's probably why they've zoomed in there in great
Exactly,
haste, in
exactly,
great
exactly.
haste, and
It's like a Chinese octopus that surrounds us from all sides. And then, when you look at, I just hope that stuff we see in the public domain, in the newspapers and so on, is just some thing for the outside consumption, and that the people inside really know the serious mess we are in with
I think
regards to these strategic minerals.
is there any kind of, I mean, I've read stray articles on this, but is there a specific journal on rare earths and strategy, geopolitical strategy? Do you want to tell me?
Not journals, but articles in this regularly come out in the American and Australian media.
Okay, so now
So
finally
yeah,
then,
it is now part of geopolitics. It
yes,
is
very
now
much so.
well outside the purely scientific domain, and because everybody recognizes it as the new oil, this
That's
is uh,
right.
this
That's
is
at least
fairly clear. We have, as I said, we have more ores than Australia and USA put together. And I think we've got into this quad, as I said earlier, simply so that we can supply these two countries some ores. But we should know where the ores are found. Even that we don't know.
so now the rush is on globally
Yeah,
to build a non-China supply chain. And
absolutely.
Australia has recently, taken the lead in this matter. We're waiting to see what happens in India because with the Yangibana mines, they've just invested $100 million in there.
Correct. Correct.
Um, and it has a booming presence now in the rare earth market within
Exactly.
a very short while. And it's poised to become the world's second largest exporter of rare earth minerals. So you and I can keep our fingers crossed and our eyes crossed and hope that this is a wake up call for India. Hopefully, the Quad alliances and will lead to our country sort of
See,
focusing
see,
on
you are
that.
on. You see, you are on the right. You are saying the correct things here, because I think India's policy towards these various countries, the policy towards all countries should be one type with rare earths, and with
Yes,
China it should be of another type. And especially with countries like Australia, USA, and so on, whatever may be our other differences with them, because no
yes,
two countries can agree on all things. But no matter what may be the differences in other things, as regards rare earths, I think we should really cooperate with them fully, or even walk the extra mile to work with Australia and USA in this
very
rare
well
earths
said.
business. We
Very well.
have to, because
Aus-
these two countries may be our only hope.
because Australia is now going to provide the rare earth minerals for all of Europe with their
Yeah, I know
new
Germany especially, I think, is going to be satisfied with the Australian supply. And this is
yes,
a place where we can also do some research in joint collaboration with people in Australia and the USA. And I think this could also be secret research. It doesn't have to be stuff that comes out in the journals and stuff like that. In fact, I think a great deal of these things must be done in secret from now on.
well, I hope that the Mandarins listening to hopefully they will listen to this and take your expert advice. Otherwise, if a giant like America feels vulnerable and threatened, what to speak of India? Well, Professor Desiraju, thank you for your time and for enlightening us in your own inimitable way. I hope we'll come back in a few months and have another conversation. Uh, it's been very, very satisfying for me personally. As I said, in my previous incarnation, I was a National Science Standard Talent Scholar. But to go back to this and research it and, understand it and to get feedback from you about how India might find itself in an unenviable and particularly precarious position um, is something that I value, and I'm pretty sure the entire viewership values. Um, we need to pursue your suggestion about more R&D, serious R&D, classified research, partnerships with the United States and Australia, as well as a special ministry for rare earths. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you
We
so much indeed. What I have said maybe in a manner that is not very popular to many people in the country, but at least a few people I think need to speak and be somewhat of a conscience keeper for what is not happening in this country today, which is of great and vital importance. And once again, I thank Atharva also for
Yes.
being able to think in terms of airing a program like this that is of somewhat of a technical type, but at the same time I think I hope I've given you the feeling, Professor Operajita, that great many people with top expertises in diverse areas need to come together if we are going to solve this problem of rare earths for India. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, and thank you to the Atharva Forum.